You know, when we conservatives talk about small government, the progressives immediately start shrieking about what the country would look like with no government at all. But that's not what we're talking about, and we both know it. You can't have a civilization without some form of government. I just want a government that's going to fit back in the box that it originally came in. So, what do you need to have good government? Well, some of the smartest, best educated minds in history thought that over not for a few days or weeks, but for their entire adult lives. They read the histories of every civilization that had ever existed, trying to find some recurring themes. And they did find some recurring themes, and here's a few of them. Concentration of power. This is bad. Give total power to one guy and you get murderers like these guys here. Now, back in 1215 in England, they had someone of that stripe, King John, who governed in the style of the day. That style was known as vis et voluntas. That's Latin for force and will. Basically, King John took whatever he wanted, just like every other king and emperor before him. John, however, was such a piece of crap that the barons that ruled their estates in John's name finally said, hey, you know what, F it, we're done. And they took King John to a table and they made him sign away the power of force and will. He signed an agreement with the rebellious barons called the Magna Carta Libertatum, the Great Contract of Freedom. England was no longer ruled by one nasty king. Now it was ruled by 25 nasty barons, but this Magna Carta was the first time in history that someone had limited the power of the king. Now this led the founding fathers to their second recurring theme of good government, the rule of law. This means that those whose heads get chopped off is no longer decided by one paranoid degenerate having a bad day. Introducing the rule of law meant that there were rules for what was allowed and what was not, and those rules were written down so that anyone could read them. And the rule of law meant that no one, no king, no baron, no shah or sultan, no one was above the law. The rule of law applied to everybody. Okay, said the founders, that's good. Laws are good, but who makes the laws? What if those people suck too? Well, 2,000 years before the signing of the Magna Carta, the ancient Greeks lived in something called a city-state. That's basically a walled city that was its own country. Now, in one of these city-states called Athens, these regular Greeks got it into their heads that the people themselves could make the laws and that they all had to live by them. In the Greek language, that meant that the demos, the people, would hold all of the kratia. In English, that means the power. This demokratia, democracy, was an awesome idea. But if it was such an awesome idea, why did it die out 2,000 years before our founding fathers were born? Well, it turns out there's a serious flaw in democracy, and it's simple, really. Some people are idiots, and some people are bastards. And some people are idiot bastards. Athens fell because the Athenian leader, Pericles, got everyone all liquored up about fighting the Spartans. The Spartans! The Athenians voted for war. 27 years of war later, Athens was in ruins, and so was democracy. A democracy can be dangerous because people do stupid things. Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany because millions of Germans had voted for him and his National Socialist Party. Then these guys, the German Parliament, or the Reichstag, voted 441 to 84 to give Adolf Hitler absolute power. And that was a bad idea. So, finally, these dead white males realized that you could not put a fence around the power. It just didn't work that way. But you could build a wall around the individual. You could build a wall of individual rights. That's why, contrary to most people's belief, the United States is not a democracy. The United States is a republic. Now, there are many elements of a democracy. The people elect the president and the Congress and so on. But there is a wall of human rights, not around the government, but around the people, that stops these lying, greedy half-wits who seek political power from punching people in the nose and stealing all of their candy. The Constitution of the United States exists to distribute personal political power. The president has power, that's true, but Congress has power too, and so does the Supreme Court. These three branches of government, the executive, legislative, and the judicial, are constantly screaming and yelling and poking and slapping and biting each other. If one of them gets drunk, the other two tie him to a bed for a while, and they write on its face with Sharpies and wait for it to sober up. Now, here's one final cool little twist. Virtually everyone in America knows that the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, gives us freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble and peacefully protest, and so on. And virtually everyone in America is wrong. The Bill of Rights does no such thing. The First Amendment says that freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and the freedom to protest is built into every human being the minute that they come into this world. The First Amendment simply says that the government does not have the power to take that right away. Good government is not a player. Good government is the referee. Referees aren't allowed to call penalties against one team and not the other. Referees do not intercept passes and then run them back for touchdowns. And referees do not make up the rules as they go along. Now, try to imagine a Super Bowl where both teams are comprised exclusively of referees and there are 22 penalty flags being thrown on every single play. If you can then also imagine that there are 100,000 referees in the stadium and each one of them is constantly screaming out 100,000 rule changes, and 2 or 3 players are shuffling around looking frightened and confused, well then you will understand why conservatives don't like big government.